Hey, it's Dallas. Time for another vlog. Thank you so much for tuning in. And today's vlog is actually different. A little special, I think. It's going to be the first in a series of videos that I'm going to be doing probably for the life of the show, where I take a scene from the show and I pull out the scalpel and we dig into the guts of the scene. Everything from the writing to what we were thinking on the day of when we were filming it, the actors involved, the decisions that we made, the choices that we made when we were in editing and music and sound and all of that, so that you can get a detailed analysis of maybe why you like the scene. If the scene was impactful to you, you're going to get a good chance to hear why. And we're going to be doing this for multiple years and many scenes. And so if you've got a scene that you really loved from the show and you really want to hear more about it and dig into the behind the scenes of it, please mention it in the comments below, and I promise we'll get to it at some point. The first scene that I'm going to analyze is not a big surprise. This is one of the bigger scenes. It's the scene at the end of episode 1, the infamous scene where Mary encounters Jesus, or as she's known at the beginning of the scene as Lilith. One of the reasons why this scene is so important, and is probably the most important scene in the entire show, is that we don't actually begin writing until we know where it's going to end. So when we first started writing season 1, we knew where the show was going to end. We discussed that first. Where is the final season going to end up? Spoiler alert, we know where the show is going to end because we know where the Gospels end. So that's going to probably be season 8. We think the show is going to be 8 seasons or so. And then we worked our way backwards because we really want to earn that ending. And so we know where it's going to end. We work our way backwards to make sure that it's as impactful as possible. Then we do the same thing with season 1. When we're writing season 1, we're thinking of where it's going to end. So we knew where season 1 was going to end before we started episode 1. And then episode 1, we knew where episode 1 was going to end before we started writing it. And so this scene at the end of episode 1 was the first scene that we actually worked out before the rest of the episode was worked out. And we really wanted to earn that. We knew that this was probably going to be the most important scene because episode 1 is a bit of a slow burn. It takes time to introduce you to the people. It takes time to introduce you to this world. This is like a regular show, not just a regular Bible project, that typically a Bible project takes you from miracle to miracle, Bible verse to Bible verse, takes you to the greatest hits right away. We are doing something a little bit different where we want to introduce you to this world and make sure that you get to know who these people are and what this world is, so that when those moments do come, they're that much more impactful. So while some of you have said, oh, episode 1 maybe is a little slow moving, but I really love the ending. Well, the reason the ending is so powerful and impactful is because of the time that we took to get there, I believe. This is a scene that has been very important from the beginning, and I'm going to dig right into it right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to watch the scene, and you can watch it with me, and I will stop it every time that there's something of note that I think you might find interesting. So we start off right away. Obviously, I'm going to start with the moment. And the reason that I'm starting with this moment, I'm going to stop it right there, where is you actually see Jesus walking up. And most people don't notice that. But Jesus is in the background. And this was one of the key moments that we really wanted to focus on, which was Jesus meets you where you are. And if you remember earlier, Lilith is suicidal, and she's at the edge of a cliff, and she sees a dove, and the dove essentially leads her to this place. And the most interesting thing about it is the dove actually leads her to a bar, one of her usual hangouts. And the fact that Jesus is there and that's where he shows up was always something that we found really interesting. Might be controversial, but we found it would be really interesting, and a good way to introduce Jesus for the first time is in this place of ill repute, a place that you wouldn't normally expect. And so as you notice in that moment, you can see Jesus' arm and the one side of his body as he approaches her. So he's now pouring the drink. He doesn't want to give it to her because he knows it's a problem, and there's the hand.
I said leave.
The looks back and forth, it gets me every time.
It's not for you.
There it is. What are the first words Jesus says in the whole show? That's not for you. That's not accidental. One of the themes of the show and one of the themes of the devotional book, I have this right here, the devotional book, The Chosen, 40 Days with Jesus. If you don't have it yet, get it. It takes you deeper into these moments and into the Gospels. It's on the app or in the store. Anyway, one of the themes of the show and the devotional is Jesus makes us what we're not. And so the first time you see Jesus, he's saying, that's not for you. Your previous life is no longer yours. Your previous life is now, as we're going to see later, mine. And those things that you hold on to, those things that are important to you, they're not for you. I'm for you. There's multiple meanings in that line, and you could emphasize each word of that line. You could say it, that's not for you, or that's not for you, or that's not for you, and that's not for you. There's so many meanings within that one line, those 4 words. It's not accidental that we chose those words to be the first out of Jesus' mouth in this show.
Don't touch me.
And then right away, what's the thing that Mary does? Of course, at the time, she's calling herself Lilith. It's a name that she gave herself, and I'll talk about this more in a minute, but it's a name she gave herself to kind of escape her past. But what's the first thing that we often do when Jesus shows up in the picture, or when God is trying to get a hold of us or trying to connect with us in some way? We pull away. We're afraid to give up those things that we've held so powerfully. And for her, and one of the reasons why, as you can see in this shot, she's actually touching her head. For her, the things that she's holding on to are the things that are actually doing her the most harm. But we tend to cling to what we find most comfortable. She is feeling pain because the demons in her are so disturbed by Jesus' presence, and they are active and full bore, and she could be having a blackout at any moment. And so she knows that she's in pain. She doesn't know what's causing it. All she knows is she wants to get out of there as soon as possible.
Lily.
So as you see, she's feeling the headache.
Lily, are you
and
okay?
I love in every moment, I'll go ahead and pause it again. So one of the things that we do in all of our major scenes, in all of our miracle scenes and all of our big scenes, the focus is rarely on just the people involved. We're always showing reactions. We're always showing what observers are thinking, because in many ways that can increase the impact. And these scenes are not just about the miracles themselves. They're about the impact of the miracles. And so the people who are involved in the moment and the people who are watching and observing, they represent the audience. The people who are observing are in many ways the clue to the audience that this is something different, that this is something unique, this is something powerful. And we wanted to show the impact that Jesus had on others, not just those who he's directly changing or redeeming. And so every time that there's a scene where someone is changed or redeemed or healed in some way, you're going to see a lot of reactions. And I've always believed, maybe it's just a personal preference, that I believe that reactions oftentimes enhance the emotional impact of the scene.
I have to go. Leave me alone.
Again, there's a lot said in the silence. We try not to overdo dialogue in some of these scenes. That's helpful when you have such beautiful actors like Jonathan and Liz. I'm going to pause it here. Obviously, when scenes are filmed, they're not necessarily continuous. And so the scene that was inside the Hammer, the interior of the bar, that was filmed on a soundstage in Dallas. And this scene, this moment that comes right after it, was filmed outdoors in the freezing cold, literally, in the middle of nowhere, about an hour from Dallas. This is on a set called Capernaum Village in just outside Weatherford, Texas. Before we shot this scene, we all were feeling the pressure. We knew this was the most important scene in the episode and probably in the whole show. And so Liz and Jonathan and I all kind of went to our separate corners to prepare emotionally and intellectually and to pray. And I remember when we were getting closer to be ready, I walked up to Liz and she already had tears streaming down her face. And I had tears streaming down my face. And so we just looked at each other and we didn't want to mess with it. We didn't want to overthink it. So I just kind of looked at her and I grabbed her hand and I said, "Thank you for being here." And she just nodded. And I said, "You're the only one who can do this." As we've talked about in other videos, it took us a long time to cast this role, to find the right person, and Liz was the right person. Jonathan, of course, has been involved with me portraying Jesus for years in some smaller projects and vignettes that we've done. So we've done this before. I remember all we did was hug. We were emotional, and we knew that this was going to be important.
Leave me alone.
Decided to shoot this in slow motion to really slow the scene down because the episode had taken so long to develop that we didn't want to rush this scene.
Mary of Magdala.
Mary of Magdala. And there it is. So when he says Mary of Magdala, that, for many people, they've wondered, is he calling her that for the first time? Is this the first time she's been called Mary? Or is he calling her back to what she was called, who she was as a girl? The answer is, it's who she was as a girl. She was born Mary. We say that actually in episode 8. at Matthew's party, she says, it's Mary now, referring to her name, and Jesus says it always was. She was Mary's little girl. She gave herself the name Lilith to kind of escape her past. In episode 1, we show some of the horrible things that happened to her in her past, the death of her father, the assault by a Roman soldier, and we believe that when that assault happened, that at least in the context of the show, that was the darkness that overtook her. And that's when she was open enough, and she was so traumatized that she was able to be possessed or oppressed by demons. Jesus is calling her back to who she really is, who she was born to be, who she was meant to be, who she was created to be. She is Mary of Magdala. Back then, you were identified by where you were from. So he's calling out who she actually is when he says Mary of Magdala. And she hasn't heard that name in a long time. And actually, I'll show you this in a second. I'm going to go ahead and push play as we see the slow motion dropping of the cup.
Who are you?
So she says, who are you? How do you know my name? Now, she didn't actually say, how do you know my name on the set. That's something we added later in what's called ADR, Additional Dialogue Recording. We added that line just to make sure that people would understand that Mary was her original name. Some people were getting confused. We wanted to make sure that was clear. So we added later, she was in a sound booth in Texas, and she said the line, how do you know my name? And tried to match the intensity and the emotion of the scene. And so she said, how do you know my name? In that studio. That wasn't in the script.
How do you know my name?
Thus says the Lord who created you.
So when Jesus says, thus says the Lord who created you, that sound that you hear, that bell, I remember our composers, Dan Hasseltine and Matt Nelson, composed the score for the show, and it's brilliant. And I told them, I said, you better deliver on this scene, because this is when we have to make it worth it. The episode has been such a slog at times, not easy to watch, and we have to deliver on the emotion. And so it took us a long time to find the right sounds and the right music for this moment, and to also decide to use Ruby Amanfu, who's the voice of the opening credits and the voice of several moments throughout the show, for her to kind of not only be the voice of some of the misery and pain that takes place, but the voice of the joy. And almost like a narrator in many ways. Her voice becomes like an emotional narrator. And so that bell, I remember when I heard that bell, I was like, that's it. We need to use that bell, because that is just, it's an announcement. This scene is an announcement, not only to Mary, but to the audience, of what this show is and what this scene is and who Jesus is. I remember in our test screenings, this scene was 20 seconds shorter, at least. 20 to 30 seconds shorter, and there wasn't quite as much impact. The lines were the same, the dialogue was the same, but we slowed things down and added space in between the lines, which gave time for the music to really click in and have its impact, and that made a massive difference. And these are the things that go into the fine details of making sure that each scene has emotional impact, and that is the key of The Chosen. We're not just portraying or reenacting what happened, we're trying to capture the mood and the emotion and make it as emotionally impactful as possible.
And he who formed you. Fear not. For I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine.
You are mine. Again, as he's approaching her, we shot that in multiple angles, and it's a decision as to when we decide to cut to the close-ups, a decision to when to show the wide shots. So if you notice, when Jesus is chasing her, he's not in focus. He's not in focus until she hears the name, she drops the cup. Don't be surprised if that's not the last time we see something like that happen. Just going to say. She drops the cup to illustrate the shattering of her past, the shattering of what she holds dear, the fact that she will never be the same again. There's a lot of metaphors with the shattering of that cup. She turns around and she sees him, and that's when we go from wider to tighter, because we want those close-ups to be as impactful as possible. I love faces and I love close-ups, but it's important to not use them too much, because then they lose their impact. And you always want to give yourself a little bit of room to cut to, so that you can do it for a reason. The decision on cutting to Jesus' face and when to do that, when to go to the close-up, was a big one here. It took a lot of time to figure out. And I remember our editor, John Quinn, and I, we spent days on this scene alone, trying to figure out what's going to really hit the audience, and what's going to, which pieces of emotion from Liz and from Jonathan are going to hit the most, and how do you make sure that you don't give away too much too soon, and that the emotional impact is too strong too early in the scene, then it doesn't give you any place to go. So the music's building slowly, and that's why the bells get bigger and stronger at key moments, and Ruby's voice gets, kind of slides into it and gets bigger and bigger. The cameras start to get closer and closer. Jesus starts to get closer and closer. All of that was intentional to make sure that this scene built to a crescendo. So when Jesus puts his hands on her head and she gasps, our portrayal is that he is exorcising the demons. I remember some people, when they first watched it, expressed that they wished that it would have been a bigger deal, that we would have seen and heard this big explosion, that you see in exorcism movies. And we just didn't want to do that. We thought that would be distracting from the scene, from the power of it. We also thought there was something really special and intimate about Jesus just touching her on her head and having that be all that needed to be done. Ironically enough, back then, touching a woman in public was never done. There have been some people who have said that wouldn't have been realistic. We believe Jesus didn't always necessarily follow those rules. He was always appropriate, of course, always moral, of course, but broke the rules for the sake of the bigger picture. When you're not necessarily allowed to touch a woman in public, I think that an exception can be made if you're actually the Son of God who's casting out all of her demons. So we worked on that a lot, again, on the set, talking to Liz about how to do that. Liz is such a beautiful, instinctive actress that it wasn't much a discussion, but making sure that when that happened, that when he touched her head, that there was this just release of everything. The lighting in this scene too was key, because as you can see, just even in the shot of Jesus in the background, Akis and I love lights. We love having flames. You'll see flames in almost every shot, sometimes even during the day. He loves smoke especially, but we love texture, and we believe that lights and flames give texture, but in many ways they also provide the lighting. We want to use more source lighting, which is where the lighting that's actually inside the scene. And so as much as possible, we tried to light the scene naturally with flames. And so sometimes at night, you got to bring out a ton of flames for it to show up on camera. This scene was a little darker than anticipated. We had to brighten it a little bit. I remember on some devices, some people, if they watch it on their computer, it's very dark. Hopefully you're not watching this on your computer. Hopefully you're watching it on the app or on your TV or on a DVD, where it's much more like how it was originally intended. I get emotional even just watching it now. I've seen that scene 200 times. I've seen the guts of it. And when she's weeping and she just collapses into his chest from a combination of exhaustion and relief, it's just awesome. It's just awesome. That's just what happens when you have two brilliant performers. And when God is involved in the show, he provides for those moments. We didn't know, of course. I remember my wife texted me after we were done, and she's like, so how'd it go? It's impossible to know because it's so mechanical. You're shooting it from different angles. Liz had to do that multiple times. Not every take is perfect. She's one of the few actresses or actors, male or female, that I've ever worked with who can deliver that level of emotion and energy in every single take. I've never seen anything like it, really. That whole first episode, she just got the heck beat out of her constantly and just brought it every time. I don't know how she did it. But not every take was perfect either. And she knows that. And sometimes we would have to do it again for various reasons. We just knew, especially in that final shot, that's how I wanted the episode to end, on that wider shot that just showed the Savior of the world with the most broken of souls and him just comforting and her accepting that comfort. Which isn't easy, but when it happens, it's beautiful. And Jesus comes to the least of these, to those who need it most, to those who need him most. And we wanted to make sure right off the bat that we were establishing who Jesus was, where he shows up, just like in the pilot episode where we show the birth of Christ, we show that he shows up to the people you wouldn't expect, in a location, in a setting you wouldn't expect. And so the arrival of Jesus in this show takes place in a place you wouldn't expect, to a person you wouldn't expect, and in a way, and in a portrayal, and we try to film it in a way that maybe you didn't expect. Hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please Subscribe to our YouTube channel or click that notification bell. It makes a huge difference. It makes sure that more people see these videos come across their feeds, so you can help us by spreading the word about the show and through these videos. And again, please leave a comment below as to what you liked about it and what you want to see more of, what you don't want to see more of, and which scenes you may like. Thanks so much. And remember, it's not your job to feed the 5,000. It's only to provide the loaves and fish.